All right, so Horrid, man, I wanted to talk some Epic Mickey with you. You're a pretty big Mickey Mouse fan, from what I hear, right?
Yes, I grew up with a lot of those shorts and stuff. So yeah.
Oh yeah, me too. Do you have any favorites?
I brought it up in the first Epic Mickey video. Well, I used footage of it at least. But Mickey's trailer is definitely up there. It's a really fun one.
Yeah, that one's with Donald and Goofy. I always liked Clock Cleaners. That one I always thought
Oh
was
yeah,
pretty
that's
funny.
a great one too.
Yeah, or Mickey and the Beanstalk. That's kind of like cheating a little bit since that's like a movie, not like a
Yeah.
short. But that one I always enjoyed as well.
I always loved Three Musketeers as well, even though again that one's cheating as well.
Yeah,
Not-
that
it's
one's
not
good.
Great, but it's a fun one.
Hey, that one's funny when Donald like rips off all of the Three Musketeer clothes. And he's like, "I'm leaving," and he puts on his hat, and then he goes off. That one's funny.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Or the part when Goofy's like thinking, he's like, "Huh, how can I get out of this situation?" And he jumps out the window.
Yeah, I love that part too.
Yeah. So we're both pretty big fans of Mickey Mouse and Disney, I would say. So when it comes to their video games, I want to say Epic Mickey is something that they still are pretty unique on. And this year, we've got the announcement of the remaster. It's coming out here in a few months. What do you think about that?
Just on visuals alone, it looks pretty good. The first trailer they showed was a little iffy because I thought it was too saturated, too bright. But a lot of the newer ones they've shown, they've clearly like listened to some of that feedback, and it's very, very nice looking, and I think very what's the word? It respects the source material quite a lot, clearly. And I'm excited to get my hands on it later this year.
Yeah, me too, because for me, Epic Mickey is my favorite game of all time. It is a game I've played every year since launch. It was one of the first games I ever pre-ordered. I remember all the press coming out about the video game and, the launch up to it. So when I think it was during a Nintendo Direct when they first announced it, I was flipping out. I was like, oh my gosh, they're doing a remake of my favorite game. And they did the same thing with the Thousand Year Door. So two of my favorite games got remade in the exact same year. So it's been a wild year for me, but I'm in agreement with Epic Mickey. The first trailer looked really okay. Like it was more so like the shock of a remake happening for this game, I would say.
Yeah.
And then the second trailer where they're starting to actually show off the world a bit more, I like that it still looks dark and twisted. That's my main thing that I still really like that they're doing.
Yeah, you need to keep that. That's part of what makes that series so unique, or at least that first game. I brought this up when I talked about the second game, but I feel like it's too nice looking. And I think that really detracts from the tone of the original game, which was just so special to that experience.
Yeah, I agree because during that time and point in Disney's history, they were pretty squeaky clean, I would say.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So it was super unique to see Disney being treated in a dark and twisted way. And I know fans were kind of upset when all that artwork leaked and it wasn't as dark as that. But I think it struck a really good balance in the original of having it where it was still fun and Disney-like, but it was like, I guess, a Tim Burton twist on Disney almost.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, you don't want to go. You need that balance because you don't want to go too far because then it just feels like it just feels wrong. Warren Spector and his team with that first game, they really hit the mark with the vibe. At least I have my issues with it, as I brought up in my video. But the one major thing I don't have a problem with is the tone and visuals of that game because I think they've aged fairly well.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about our positives and our negatives about the game and hopefully what the remake can achieve or fix, so to speak.
The major fix that I think we're all happy to see is that the camera is going to be much better in this version because that is probably, like, just on a gameplay front, that is probably one of the most major problems with the original game is how uncomfortable that camera can feel, especially in more cramped environments. Because in more open spots, it's serviceable, it's fine, but the second you get into like a tighter hallway, like in Bog Easy or something, it becomes pretty nightmarish to work around, and can lead to some pretty big frustration.
Yeah, I'm with you on the camera. I didn't have as many problems as other people through my playthroughs, And maybe that's just because I've played it almost every single year, so I'm used to it at this point, and I don't really see that big of a thing. But I do agree on the tighter angles of the game, or when you try to get Mickey in one of those corridors. I want to say when you're doing the it's a small world, and sometimes you go off into those little corridors to shut off the power of certain areas, then that's when you notice the camera the most, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Some other things that I'm not so sure how I feel about still are there's these little visual changes, like the UI looks different than the original, and I think I prefer the original for the most part because it has this like nice like paper aesthetic going on with the HUD and all that. This new one is arguably more clean and more fitting for like a video game, but I don't know, I feel like a bit of charm is missed there. And some other small visual like tweaks, like I think the thinner water, whatever you want to call it, like the sludge or whatever, looks not bad. I think it looks really nice, but like there's something about the original that looks really memorable to me that I can't put my finger on, and the new thinner water is like, it looks, like I said, it looks nice, it's just it doesn't hit the same mark, I think.
I think it might just be one of those things where, I mean, Epic Mickey is a game that we're talking about is, what, 15 years old now? 10 years old now at this point?
Oh god, yeah.
So, I mean, it's a game that we're both used to. So it will take time like any remake or remaster, so we'll always have those different tweaks we can both probably complain about. What I think is really nice, though, is that they're adding things. So I think on the newest trailer, Main Street looks really populated now. And I guess I'm going to have to get used to that, because the thing that I like about Wasteland in the original game is it felt like a wasteland. Like, it was meant for the forgotten tunes of certain things, and unless you were a diehard Disney fan, I think some people were always questioning like why Clarabelle or Horace were always there, but it was because they were certain versions of those characters that like never got put to film or never got by the concept art.
I was actually one of those people that made that claim, and then people brought up to me like, oh, they're older versions that aren't used anymore, and I was like, oh, you know what? Yeah, that makes sense. Like, people have brought up like, I think part of it why this messed with me is because they have actually been using him more recently, but the version of Pete, like all the Petes that are in the game have the peg leg, right? But they haven't used that version of Pete, besides the new like Paul Rudish shorts, when Epic Mickey came out, since probably those original cartoons. So I guess that kind of messed with me on that one.
Yeah, the characters always kind of mess with me too, because Oswald, I mean, I think I knew like a little bit about Oswald before the game came out. Not too much. The game basically opened the door on Oswald for everybody, because then that's when, you know, he became a big sensation for Disney.
Oh yeah, for sure.
For nostalgia. But I always kind of question too, like, why is Horace here? Why is Clarabelle here? Because in the Three Musketeers, Clarabelle's in that movie, and I think Horace was in a few Disney things in the background. Maybe
he was in House of Mouse, if I remember right. Like he was common like in that show. I haven't seen that in so long though, because so don't you know?
Yeah,
that's a grain of salt right there.
Yeah. So it was always kind of cool to know what was, you know, the characters that were always forgotten, or what was concept art, because that was always the thing for Epic Mickey, that it was all these forgotten characters. So to see the world more populated in the remake, it's cool, because, I mean, there's thousands of Disney characters that could enter the ring and into that world of forgotten Disney characters, or characters that never made it past the concept stage. But I do think it makes those interactions a little less special, maybe. It might just be me, though.
Something I would like to see, I don't know if they'll do it, I doubt they'd do it, but something I'd like to see is just some small NPCs that are more obscure Disney characters that haven't legitimately been used in a while. I don't think they'll do it, but I would love to see that, like, just get thrown into, like, some areas of the game.
Yeah, no doubt. Because they use this almost the exact same character for most of the NPCs. or different variations of a character, and they'll say like, oh, I think Gus says it's correct me, but he says it's like background characters in most shorts, or just
he says something like that.
He says something very specific to explain why everyone looks the same, though.
Yeah, it's just because, you know, the original Epic Mickey was probably a bit budgeted, and that's all they could do. But it works as an excuse, and it especially with like the gremlins like Gus, it works because that's basically what they all looked like, which was just like basically the same design but with different colors.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I hope they fix in the remake is a bit more easier to track what you're doing, because used to do that. I used to lose my place a lot when I was younger, when I would first play it, where I'd be like, okay, well, what quest am I on now, or what do I have to do? And I think they had like a quest list, but it wasn't that organized greatly, if I remember correctly.
I know Epic Mickey 2 had a quest list. I'm not remembering right if the first one did at this point, because it's been a little while since I last played Epic Mickey. But I definitely would appreciate something like that too. It would especially help with a big thing I'm really hoping they dealt with is the constant backtracking you have to do in the game, because like those 2D sections are great. I love them. Not when I have to play them 4 or 5 times just to finish one thing.
Yeah, or if you would like grind for e-tickets, like that's what I used to do, is go back and forth between the levels and try to grind for e-tickets if you had to buy a spark or one of Goofy's legs if you missed it in Tomorrowland.
Oh yeah.
That's what I hope too. You can go back to those lands, because the lands in Disney in Wasteland sometimes close down and you cannot return to that level even later down the road when you're having to do the blot quests. Tomorrowland is one that is completely locked, if I remember correctly, after you're done defeating Tron Pete. And then the Haunted Mansion section as well gets completely locked.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they'd have that for post-game stuff, because it really is pretty frustrating to just like, I missed one piece of Donald and now I have to pay an exorbitant price for it. Great. It'd be much nicer if I could just go find it instead. You'd still give me the option to pay for it if I want to be lazy, but you know, it'd be nice if I think that's a big part of what I want to see with this remake, is that I'm hoping there's more options just in general, like everywhere.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement, because the game actually, if you want to 100% Epic Mickey, it will require you 3 times to beat it.
Yeah, which is insane.
So I hope, I'm not saying that, because that would take away from the differing paths option, but maybe when you're done with the game, you can go back and try to access the pins maybe that you missed because you chose the thinner option or the paint option, and then same thing with the parts like we were discussing as well.
Sort of related, because it reminded me of the bosses, you bringing up the thinner path. I noticed in that the one of the latest trailers they showed off, that the Clockwork boss, I forget its name, it has new attacks.
Yeah.
So, and I noticed in the first gameplay trailer that, like, I think GameSpot showed off, that there's new platforming as well. So like they're doing more than, so this was developed by Purple Lamp, and they're definitely doing more than they did with their last remake, which was Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, which was exactly the same game pretty much. Whereas here, I think they're definitely being more lenient with changes, and I think that's a good thing with Epic Mickey, because Epic Mickey has I'd say a lot more problems that need to be dealt with, just on the basic gameplay front, let alone my issues with like the morality system and how I think it could have been worked out a little bit better. I don't think we'll see that getting changed, because that's a really, really big part of the game, and you'd basically need to restructure everything for that to function differently. But
I would like it if they brought back what originally was going to happen with Mickey Mouse himself, where you would be, I think you would be more whole if you took the good path, and then if you took the bad path of the game, you would start to like morph into a monster almost. And I'm not.
Yeah, I love that idea when I saw the concept art for it.
Yeah, and the best that the morality system goes is the music, which I mean is nice. Like when you enter a certain spot, if you're thinning out the like Oztown, for example, the music will change to a more somber tone compared to if you painted the town, it would change more into a upbeat tone. But I do hope the morality system gets not the biggest change, but just like something to kind of push you into a certain way.
It needs more impact, especially. I think it'd be good if the endings are actually different depending on what you choose. I think that'd be a little easier to pull off, right? Because you can just make different cutscenes. But the original game has this thing where like it affects these little things in the final cutscene, but for the most part, it's the same ending. Everybody's still treating you as a hero, even if you ruined everything for everybody. So it's just like this doesn't really leave an impact that much as much as it could have, which is a shame.
Yeah, there's really no push to choose a path necessarily. It's more so when you play the game. Like for instance, when I would replay it, if I was going for 100%, I would basically just go thinner the first time and then paint the second time. I wouldn't be like, let me try paint for this one, or let me try thinner for this guy. It wasn't like, okay, you're scratching your head at it. It's more so like, okay, there's really no difference unless you want this pin at this part or this pin at this part.
Yeah, it's a shame. I definitely agree. I really hope they at least change some of those things to be like to make the player more incentivized as to do one thing over the other. Like it can't just be for a collectible, because then it's basically meaningless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Speaking of added things, you were talking about the bosses. They're actually adding new abilities for Mickey Mouse as well. So, for instance, there's a run button, as well as like a power slide almost, it looks like.
Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff is from the old... there's this old pitch video for Epic Mickey where Mickey's head is like 10 feet tall, where they showed some of that stuff off, and I'm almost certain they looked at that and took inspiration from that, and I'm excited to see that kind of thing. Like I love seeing like old cut ideas come back into a project, like with the Insane trilogy. There's that one level from Crash 1 that got re-added. And another big thing about that is I'm hoping it makes the combat more enjoyable. I don't think the combat is horrible in the original game. It's serviceable, but it can take up a lot more time than I think it should, and some enemies are very frustrating. I brought this up in my video, but I really don't like how the Beetleworks are designed, because they're just obnoxious.
Yeah, same thing for the big, I always forget their name, but like the blot enemies that like try to suck up the paint or the thinner that you try.
Yeah.
Those take forever to beat.
Even worse in Epic Mickey 2, too,
yeah.
Because if they focus on Oswald, you gotta wait even longer.
Yeah. But I really hope with this remake that, at least... I mean, I don't really know what I'm looking for in this remake. I've always wanted a remake of this game because it's been stuck on the Wii. It wasn't a multi-platform game. And I think that's part of the charm of Epic Mickey, is that it was, a third-party exclusive for the Wii, which I always liked because I was a Wii player back in the day. And, I hope this kind of brings a little more attention to Oswald, as well as just, Epic Mickey and Warren Spector and what they did.
Oh, absolutely. You can... well, I brought up my problems with it, but I have so much respect for Warren Spector and his team, because they clearly were very, very passionate about this entire series, not just the first game. And it's a shame how it ended up, but I'm glad that it's coming back, and I'm really hoping this remake does well, almost just so that we can get a better follow-up, something more akin to like what Warren Spector actually wanted than the rushed thing that was Epic Mickey 2.
Do you think they will make a completely new game, like a Crash 4, for example, like just completely reboot it after this? Or do you think they will go back to Epic Mickey 2 and remake that?
I think budgetarily it would make more sense to go back to Epic Mickey 2, because you've already got that all made. But I think it would be a much smarter move to just completely start from scratch. Like like you said with Crash 4. Even though what happened isn't necessarily, like, in between, what was in between isn't necessarily the worst thing ever, it's just, like, it left a stain on the series' potential, and I think if they... I have a lot of respect for Purple Lamp, because everything they put out so far I think is pretty good. So I think they'll make the right move here. If this is successful, this needs to be a success for anything more to come of it.
Yeah, I agree. I hated Epic Mickey 2 more than anything. That was my most hyped game that I could think of at the time for me, because Epic Mickey was a game that I pre-ordered. Like, I knew everything going up to the launch of that game, and playing it was a dream come true. Yada yada yada. It took a while for me to beat, but I loved it. And then they announced Epic Mickey 2, and they did a lot of the stuff with the announcements that I was wishing from the first game. Like, I wish you could play as Oswald, 2-player. Like, that was an immediate, like, yes, of course, add that. And then everything fell apart, I think, once the Mad Doctor was the main villain. That really wasn't appealing to me. And then just the game was short. I rented the game because I don't know why I didn't pre-order it or anything like that. I think reviews were coming out, and I just was like, I'll wait. And so I rented the game from a family video, and I beat it in like 2 days. I was appalled at that, the game length.
When I was recording footage for it, it only took me about 4 hours to get everything I needed, which is I couldn't believe after I had finished replaying it. Also, you brought up the Mad Doctor being the villain a second ago, which I agree. I think he does not have anywhere close to the presence of the Blot at all. But then, for Epic Mickey 3, the plan for that was to have the Peets be the villain, which I think is an even worse idea. So I'm kind of glad that didn't continue.
Yeah, I'm glad too. I wish they would have done something maybe where... Maybe there wasn't a main villain, because the earthquakes were already enough of like this big cataclysmic event that was happening. Why are the earthquakes happening? And then you and Oswald were kind of helping each other to put together Wasteland. Like, that was already enough. I didn't think you needed a main villain. The Mad Doctor could have been there, but not as someone that was a main villain, or, I didn't really find him that fun.
That definitely would have worked better, I think. And it doesn't help that his plan is completely nonsensical, and you can tell that it was very quickly rewritten at the 11th hour. We already brought up the game being very short, but I don't think that would be as much of a problem if the ending weren't so poorly done and abrupt as well. Because it comes out of nowhere. Like, it feels more like the midway point of the game than the actual ending. And then as soon as you're done with the whole storybook sequence, you're immediately put in the final boss, and it's just not good.
Yeah, I was the exact same way, because you play that final boss, and it doesn't feel like a final boss. Like, the Blot with the first game felt like this big event that was all coming together, because you had to go through the entire wasteland to get rid of the tentacles, and so that was pretty cool. Then you had to go to Dark Beauty Castle and do this gauntlet event of reaching the top of the tower and going to all the pillars, and that wasn't even the final boss. You had to go inside the Blot himself, and so it was this massive chain of events leading up to the final boss. The Mad Doctor, like you said, you did one little, like, the storybook event, if I'm right. Yeah, and then it was just the final boss, and the final boss was like one of the, first level baby stuff. It wasn't hard.
It's so easy. It's over in no time. It's, especially if you're on the thinner route. The thinner route, it's so much quicker.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with that game. It's from the different versions, the way that the reticle works on the different versions. The Wii version will always be the best version of Epic Mickey 2, because it runs the best, it controls the best. But that game
I think the lowered fidelity actually makes it look better too.
Yeah, it makes it look like the original a little more. The HD consoles really pop the colors, and I mean, I guess that's okay, because Wasteland was restored a bit right at the end of Epic Mickey 1.
Yeah.
But it still just, it felt really off.
It makes sense from a storytelling standpoint, but from like an actual visual standpoint, and being a fan of the original game, it does not hit the same way. It just, it's too bright, it's too cheery. We were talking about it earlier, but what made the original feel so special was that like everything around that time that Disney was putting out felt like cutesy and nice, and the original didn't. And now we're at Epic Mickey 2, and this just feels like every other Disney thing coming out right now.
Yeah, I didn't like the voice acting either. I hope they don't add voice acting to the remake of Epic Mickey, because I mean, it was cool to like have like the voice acting, but it felt really off with the dialogue. Like you would have Mickey like saying something super serious, and then it'd be like the, how's it going, guys? Like
yeah, I brought this up in my Epic Mickey 2 video. I feel the exact same way about the voice acting. I feel like a lot of people bring up that like when a game doesn't have voice acting, that it feels cheap, and I think that's a misunderstanding of why some games choose to not have voice acting. Like sometimes it is a budgetary thing because voice acting is expensive. You have to pay a lot of different people to do voices. But like I use Nintendo as an example, which is one of the richest game companies on the planet. They can afford voice acting if they want it. They don't really do voice acting that often because it just doesn't fit the tone. And with Epic Mickey, tonally, that game works a lot better because we don't really hear these characters say any full sentences. It's just noises. And I don't know how you feel about this. This is a little bit of a tangent. It's still related. I don't like Frank Welker as Oswald very much. I brought this up in my video. I don't think he's very fitting, personally.
I don't mind it, but it definitely takes a bit to get used to. It's like, oh, that's the voice that you chose for Oswald? It's like, all right. I mean, as in terms of him working off of Mickey Mouse, it's a total difference compared to Mickey Mouse. Like, Oswald's kind of more of a grouchy sounding character, while Mickey Mouse is more the...
Yeah, it definitely works in that way.
In concept, but definitely, like I said, when it comes to just the dialogue and how the characters talk to the way they sound, it doesn't work. So that was something I hope they do not add to the remake, because that will ruin it for me almost.
Yeah, I from what we've seen in the trailers, it looks like, and I think I remember hearing, don't again, grain of salt, I remember hearing that it is just gonna be the original with like just the mumbles and stuff, which is the way to go. And I hope if this is successful and they do an Epic Mickey follow-up, and if they don't just remake 2, that they do the same there as well. I don't think they will. If they have a bigger budget, I think they will also go for voice acting, but I'm hoping that the voice acting is a lot more subdued, and I would prefer that they get... So Mickey has... This is weird, and I don't know why, but Mickey has 2 voice actors, like 2 modern voice actors, and he's the only one of those characters to have one. There's the Mickey voice that we're used to, which is in Epic Mickey and everything else. And then there's the actor, I don't remember either of their names, unfortunately. But there's the actor in the Paul Rudish shorts, who I think works better as Mickey personally, and I think if they do go with voice acting, they should get somebody who can do Mickey's voice a little more subdued. Honestly, I think all of the characters should be a bit more subdued in their voice acting, because hearing, like, Goofy go, "Gorsh!" while he's missing an eyeball and, like, his leg, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work, like you said.
Yeah, it's a bit like the Mario movie, where I know a lot of people gave Chris Pratt a lot of flack, but I mean, at least with his voice, he was able to bring out the serious moments when Mario needed to be serious, and then when he wanted to be goofy, he could. I think the same thing applies to Mickey Mouse, where I think that would be hard, because with Mario, we never heard his voice before necessarily, at least like in an official way.
And the most we've ever gotten is Sunshine.
Yeah, and with Mickey Mouse, we're all so used to that high-pitched squeak. I mean, it's practically more iconic than the silhouette at this point. So I think that would be hard, but I think you could do it where you could have him be happy and cheery when he needs to, but you really need to tone it down if you were going to do voice acting for Epic Mickey.
For sure.
Yeah. You think they might include Power of Illusion? It's down the road?
I hope not. I went over this in my Epic Mickey 2 video, but I do not like that game at all. I think the sprite work is gorgeous. I think the platforming feels fine, but it is a very mind-numbing experience, of which I compared... The only game I felt comparable to was Mort the Chicken on the PlayStation 1, which is... you can finish in an hour, and it feels like it's 20 hours long.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I mean, I like the game to a certain degree. I think I like the idea more of an Epic Mickey game for portable consoles. And I got to appreciate it a little more as I got older, because then you find out about like how it's kind of like a sequel to the Castle of Illusion and all those other games. So I can appreciate it there, and I'm in agreement. The sprite work, gorgeous. I don't like the gameplay of it. I will agree there.
Yeah.
I don't like how you have to use the touchscreen to paint in objects. Like, it's a cool idea to bring Epic Mickey to the 3DS, but I think the coolest thing about it was just all the Disney characters and references.
Oh, for sure. I brought that up, that's probably the main part about that game that I really like is, while the interactions aren't common, like there isn't a lot of them, what's there is cute, it's charming. And like you said about the touchscreen stuff, I think it would have been fine if they used it a lot less, but you get sick of that by the end of the tutorial. Like, they make you use it so often, and it's the worst when you have just enough paint, so you have to keep filling it in. Like, you have to do it perfectly or else you're just not going to succeed, and it's frustrating. That game is frustrating.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of an oddity, because it was the companion title to Epic Mickey 2, which it still makes no sense to me. Like, the whole thing with Epic Mickey 2 still, it baffles my brain. Like, they wanted to go above and beyond. It's like, okay, you wanted to do multi-platform, but it's like your main audience was there on the Wii. Maybe you could have done it for the Wii U, since that was brand spanking new. Maybe a Wii U exclusive.
And you still got the touchscreen, you know? So.
Yeah, but to do it for Xbox 360, PC, Wii, PS Vita, the Wii U, and one more console? PS3?
I'm not remembering.
It was for like
PS3.
Every single console, and each one had different control schemes. So like the PS3 had the Move controller enabled. I think Xbox 360 even had some Kinect abilities, if I'm remembering. PC.
I didn't see that on the box, but I that would have been a good thing to bring up if I had known about that. Whoops.
I don't remember. I mean, those gimmicks were always a thing. Wii U, you have a different control scheme, and the gamepad on top of that.
Hey, wait. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the Wii U one really bothers me, because that has Wii remote capability, right? The Wii U. But that version of Epic Mickey 2 just doesn't have any pointer controls.
Yeah, you can't. If you're playing, what is it? One player, you can't use a Wii remote.
I don't know what they were thinking.
And then
I don't know what they were thinking.
And then, they were having difficulty developing Epic Mickey 2, and they were like, all right, you know what? Let's develop a 3DS title along with it. It's like, on paper, it makes sense business-wise to a certain degree. Like, having all the different consoles, having all, a companion title or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, man, if you were having difficulty with the second game, don't even develop a companion title at that point.
Oh, for sure. I'd love also to see the statistics on just how much Epic Mickey 2 sold on each console. I want to know which one it sold the most on.
My guess is the Wii, because
I would think the Wii as well.
That's not only the one with the best control scheme, in my opinion, because of the pointer. It's not like the remake where the camera moves with the pointer finally. That was my main concern when they announced the remake. I was so excited about the remake, and then the first thing I thought of was, how are they going to do the pointer controls?
It's weird in Epic Mickey 2 because it's almost like that on the Xbox version, right? But for some reason the pointer starts moving first. And I don't know why they made that decision, but if we are going with the pointer moving with the camera, I'm glad it's just locked. It just moves with the camera.
Yeah, it's like an FPS, it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just... Epic Mickey 2, I could talk about forever, because that game is, such a problem. The first game was, this charming, indie game almost. It felt like an indie game, kind of, in a certain way, where it was releasing during a time when, I don't know, the Wii was in its heyday. It was interesting. It was different than anything Disney was putting out at the time. And
very niche in comparison to its contemporaries, for sure.
And then Epic Mickey 2, they were just like, let's go big or go home, but at the same time, we're not gonna go big. It's like, okay.
Epic Mickey 2 also just has a lot more technical issues than the first game, especially the Wii U version, which I've heard horror stories about.
It chugs at single-digit frames during some points in the game.
God.
Like, if you have, like, multiple enemies on it, it is a nightmare.
Something I would have liked to see with the remake, to get back to that a little bit. There's this thing I thought would have been really cool with the original game that I knew wasn't really all that possible given the hardware. I would have loved to see the lighting on characters have that same, I don't even know, that same like brush effect that they have in the 2D cutscenes for shading. And I know we can do that kind of thing now. A lot of games have a lot of specialized shaders for that kind of thing. I get why they didn't. It's closer to the original if they don't do that, but I think that would have been a really cool way to keep the 2D and 3D parts like more connected. And I think it would have looked very clean if pulled off correctly.
Yeah, or even like reanimate the original scenes to look more like hand-drawn animation to a certain degree. That would have been really cool.
Yeah, they're just using upscaled versions of the originals, I think.
Yeah, not that big. Whatever. We're getting a remake at this point. It's hard to complain at that point. But I
didn't even think it would happen, so...
Yeah, exactly. But I do agree with you. It's kind of like the silhouette of Mickey Mouse, how that's always viewable in the 3D space. No matter where you turn that camera, no matter how you look at Mickey Mouse himself, you're always going to see his ears and his face in that shape, no matter what.
Yeah, I always thought that was so impressive.
I wish they did that more with other characters, too. And I can't think of any that would go that mile, but yeah, that would have been another thing to kind of link those cutscenes as well as the 3D gameplay together as well.
Speaking of the 2D stuff, I really like how the 2D sections are looking so far. They've only shown like 2, I think, so far, like the black and white ones. And I'm really excited to see how they overhauled a lot of the ones based off of the colored cartoons. I forget the name of the short, but there's the one where Mickey goes through his mirror, and I'm interested to see how that looks with this visual overhaul. They can cram in a lot more details and a lot more references to those shorts, which was something I really found endearing about the original 2D sections in the original games, and is one of the only major parts of Epic Mickey 2 I still think are fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was a little mad when I was younger when I first got the game because you know how you collect those movie clips and you can give it to the cinema? I thought you would unlock the movies. And back in the day, those movies just weren't readily available like they are now. Like, everybody has Disney Plus. Everyone can see all these classic Disney shorts. So hopefully this remake kind of brings people to want to watch Disney's older history, especially Oswald. Maybe look up some of his silent shorts. But
I hope so.
I don't know. Maybe in the remake they could have it where when you're going through Oswald's sections of short cartoons, you could unlock all of those since those are a little more rare. And
what is it in the original? You can unlock just 2 shorts, pretty much.
Yeah, you unlock, I believe, the Mad Doctor and Oh What a Night, which is Oswald's
that's one of Oswald's
shorts. But at the time, I wish there was a lot more shorts you could have unlocked because those cartoons were so rare in the early 2000s. They were never really released that often. And if they were in those massive, like, $100 collector's editions that you could never really find.
Yeah, it would have been nice. And the worst part is the way that the UI is designed for that menu, where it shows you the shorts, there's like a bunch of empty slots. Mm-hmm. So it makes you think that there's more to unlock, but there just aren't.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I played through Epic Mickey, because I didn't have internet growing up until, like, I don't know, like 2015 or 14. And so I didn't know for the longest time there was just those 2 shorts you could unlock. So I was frantically searching, like, every time I'd go through Epic Mickey, I'd be like, maybe I can find one if I go through here or whatever.
Oh, I can't imagine how frustrating that would have been as a kid.
It wasn't that bad. I just got my information otherwise. Like, my dad had internet at his work, so he would bring home information for me. Like, or like, my mother had a phone that had internet, so we would connect my mom's like AT&T touchscreen phone with the hotspot to my Wii or the Wii U or anything like that, and that's how we would download games. We would use a hotspot. But I would get like I would go to my library and I would rent the Epic Mickey book, the player's guide. I have it over there. I have the hardcover version. That one's really
nice.
Cool. Has a lot of great artwork in it, and like a forward by Warren Spector, so that's pretty cool.
Ooh, you know what I'm hoping comes with this? I'm hoping we get an art book for this version of the game, because I love art books for games. Like, I have the one for Crash 4, and it's so nice.
I do too, and the one for Epic Mickey 1 is super expensive. I mean, we're talking like $400 for that art book. Because I wanted to buy it for a video I'm working on for the game, and I was just like, $400? Heck no. And
where's the PDF?
Yeah, exactly, or Internet Archive. But I'm hoping there's a bit more of a collector's edition, because did you see the collector's edition for this game?
I saw the statue. And the keychain. Those look really, really nice. I'm not gonna get the collector's edition because I don't want to spend that kind of money.
You couldn't.
But
it was.
They look great.
It was a limited edition and it sold out.
Oh, you
instantly.
mean the original? I'm so sorry. Yeah.
No. I'm saying the new version. Like the original had.
You are talking about.
Yeah, so the new version sold out instantly, and it was a limited edition. Like, they're not producing anymore.
Wow.
And scalpers are going for like $400 to $500 now. It's insane.
Of course they are. Of course.
Yeah. I was pretty upset because the original, like, you could easily pick up a collector's edition of the original version for like $60. And I was like, oh yes, like they're doing a collector's edition for all of us Epic Mickey fans. And then I check Amazon and like the first 5 minutes sold out. I'm like, all right.
Well, maybe they'll do a second printing. That's surprising to hear, because I've seen a couple of the other THQ collector's editions that they've done, like for the Destroy All Humans remakes, and the stuff for those on the secondhand market are fairly cheap and easy to get. So it's shocking to hear that. I guess Epic Mickey is a lot more. It has. I don't know if it has a more popular fan base than the other THQ games that have been like released, but it definitely has a more rabid fan base. So I kind of understand that.